After a busy few months that included organization of Sarah's exhibition at the Gairloch Museum, we took an opportunity in October to go up for a bit of exploring and relaxing. After a stop for some of our favourite fish and chips in Pitlochry, we drove on to Killiecrankie. We had been here in late spring a couple of years ago, but wanted to have a look in autumn. The pass of Killiecrankie has been a main route into the Highlands for centuries, and it's an important historic site as well. A battle in the 1689 Jacobite Rising took place here, with Jacobite forces defeating a government army, and Queen Victoria visited in 1844, describing it as quite magnificent and stating that Prince Albert was in perfect ecstasies. And with that deeply embedded in our minds, we continued on to Badachro. The next day we drove a couple hours north for a walk up Stac Pollaidh. At 612 meters above sea level, Stac Pollaidh isn't a terribly high mountain, but it rises prominently in this glacially carved landscape. The path is impressively constructed and winds through a beautiful little forest before quickly gaining elevation, but this is where the views begin to unfold. After a brilliant Sunday on Stac Pollaidh, any plans for Monday had to include rain. So we decided to stick around Badachro. It was a perfect day for a bit of reading, making salsa, gardening, and a good walk. On Tuesday, we were out and about again with a visit to another place we'd not yet been, a Second World War-era battery positioned to defend Loch Ewe, which was a major assembly point and depot for convoys to the Arctic, West Africa, and America. The turbulent sea was a reminder of a tragic incident that occurred along this bit of coast. In February 1944, the American merchant marine ship SS William H. Welch, with a complement of more than 60 men, ran aground and sank during a severe storm. Only 12 men survived the swim to shore, and the efforts of local crofters, many of whom walked miles over boggy terrain in the middle of the stormy night to get here, were essential to rescuing them. A walk on nearby Firemore Beach on the south shore of Loch Ewe was a pleasant end to the day's excursion. It was a good place to just slow down and spend some time with the more subtle bits of the landscape. We thought some woodland would be welcome at this point in the week, and the Beinn Eighe National Nature Reserve is one of our favorite places for that. This is the UK's oldest nature reserve, established in 1951 in part to protect this forest of birch, juniper, and Caledonian pine that have grown here for most of the past 10 millennia since the last glaciers retreated. It's about 550 meters up to the top of the ridge from the car park by Loch Marie, which is near sea level. We've been up there a couple times before, and there's lots to explore, but on mountain walks there's often a tendency to quickly grind through bits like this forest and get to the heights. This time we wanted to meander through the forest and take in the changes as the elevation increases. The vegetation changes dramatically as you gain elevation, with every 305 meters in height equaling a distance of about 965 kilometers north. So by the time you're at the top of the ridge, the ecosystem becomes akin to areas above the Arctic Circle. On our drive across to Torridon, we stopped for a browse at the Painted Horse antique shop in Gairloch. It was well worth the stop, as we picked up these fantastic overhead projector transparencies of animal skeleton x-rays. Then it was on to Torridon, where we had been a couple of months ago for an ascent of Beinn Eighe. In August, we had gone up on the hottest day of the year, a day when the sun was blazing and the midges were swarming in dense clouds. But this day could not have been more pleasant, as we set off on a path that goes up the valley between Beinn Eighe and Beinn Eighe. Though there was low cloud over the mountains, the air was fairly still, so the valley was filled with the sound of rushing water. As with the rest of our visit, we encountered very few people in this place, so it was another good day to take our time, look, and listen, and for Kenny to make some photographic experiments. Our last day proved to be particularly brilliant. We got a late start and had a lovely, if brisk, walk along Opinan Beach. Then we went along to Gairloch and the Achtercairn Archaeology Trail. Above the village is an area that has been occupied and cultivated for nearly 5,000 years. The ruins of Neolithic huts or roundhouses and other sites, as well as evidence of farming and tree planting up until recent years, can all be found here. The resources of this land have been used and reused over time. Many of the stones from roundhouse ruins were utilized to build this mid-19th century sheep enclosure, now a ruin itself. This is an active archaeological site, and work is still being done to unfold the layers of history here. We expected some breaks in the cloud on our final evening, so Kenny and I took a walk by the harbor to take in the night sky. Mars is quite close now, by cosmic distances anyway, and was prominent over the horizon. But the surprise of the evening, and a highlight of the whole visit, was a brief glimpse of the aurora borealis. And that was a good way to say, until next time. At Stac Pollaidh, we encountered not one, but two groups of young people humming music from the Lord of the Rings films as they walked. We discussed whether this was cringeworthy or encouraging, finally deciding it was both. The quality of our conversation clearly affected Kenny, who responded with a Lord of the Rings-inspired image that, rather than recalling heroes of old traversing a majestic landscape, quite effectively taps into one more reflective of the surreal terror that we have come to know as the year 2020. Ah, stars.